Hello, welcome, happy Pride. This book is gay. Are you gonna help me film the video? You can't tease them with just your ear. You gotta like, this is my baby. This is Keela. She's an old lady, but she's so full of spice. Look at how dumb you look. Look at you. Oh, I love you. She was sleeping during the last video, but she seems to be a little bit more excited for this one. Alright, if you watched my last video, welcome back. If not, hi, I'm Ken. I started reading again recently. I'm trying to read horror books, but none of them have been scary yet. Although this book is less of a horror book than God in the Shed. God in the Shed at least was like a little crazy. So today I'm going to be talking about Small Angels by Laura Owen. It is not a horror book. It was in the horror section of chapters. It is not a horror book. I would say that it is like an adult fairy tale. That's how I would describe it. It is very much not scary. I think they put it in horror because there's ghosts in it. But that's not enough. That's not enough to make it horror. Do you see? Hold on. I have to show you guys one of the books that I'm going to be reading eventually because I think, do you see this little fucker? That's scary. This is gonna be a horror book. I'm not reading it next though. The next book that I'm going to read is going to be the sequel to God in the Shed. Very excited for that. We're not talking about that right now. We're gonna talk about Small Angels. Similar to the last video, I'm going to talk... You are so unhelpful. Keela Salai, get down from there. Don't show YouTube your ass. I can't believe her. Similar to the last video, I'm gonna like give you a basic premise, tell you what I feel about it, like what my overall score was, and then I'm going to talk about spoilers in a spoilery review. I also have a fucking whiteboard this time, so if I need to explain complex things, because this book's kind of twisty-turny, we will have a visual display. I wanted to draw Duke Nukem saying, damn, these bitches gay, but I don't have the energy to do that. Also, it's like gray outside. I feel like my lighting's okay, but if it's not, it's because it's been raining for the past like 5 days, which is great, honestly, because the entire country is on fire right now. So we kind of need the rain. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Anyway, let's talk about this goddamn book. Let's go. This is Small Angels by Laura Owen. As I mentioned previously, it is not scary. It is a fairy tale that is kind of dark, and that's really it. I wouldn't say that it is particularly frightening. There just are ghosts. In Small Angels, there are not small angels. That is the name of a church in a village. We're gonna do some really poor illustrations, okay? Small Angels takes place in a small little village in England. They have literally the most English names I have ever read in my entire life. And there's one main road that leads out of the village, and the road is surrounded by these woods that are called Mock Beggar Woods. And outside the woods is a little church, and that is Small Angels. There's another church in the village, but there's one out of the village, and that's Small Angels. By the church, there is like a farm called Blanche Farms, okay? And the woods are magic or sentient or something. They have some kind of powers, and they love stories. So like way back in the day, there was like a tradition of the townspeople that they would, after a funeral, they would go to the woods and they would tell them the story of that person's life. The woods, if they liked them enough, would kind of like resurrect them as a ghost. I think the most interesting example that we have in the book is there's a lady who was saved by her goose. She had like a pet goose and her house caught on fire. The goose like woke her up and saved her. And so then when the goose died, the woods were like, wow, we love that goose. And so then they brought the goose back to life as a ghost. And so now there's like a ghost goose. And I think that's really funny and kind of slaps. I love that as a premise. I love woods that are sentient and like have the ability to like manipulate things, like not just like the woods itself. Like the woods can like rearrange and shift and stuff, but they can also put thoughts into your mind and like confuse you. Like they can make you forget shit. There's one point where people are in the woods and they just forget how to leave, even though they've gone in the woods so many times before. And that slaps. I love that as a premise. But the woods have been dormant for a very long time, and the people who live at Blanche Farms do not live there anymore. And the people at Blanche Farm kind of like kept the woods at peace so that it wouldn't hurt people. So a lot of people like have left the village, and one of them is named Sam, and Sam has returned to the village because he's going to get married in Small Angels to his fiancée Chloe. And Chloe is the first main character that we get to meet. So the main plot of Small Angels follows the stories of like 3 different women. We have Chloe, who is getting married. We have Kate, who is about to become Chloe's sister-in-law because she's marrying her brother. So they're gonna be sisters-in-law. And then Lucia, who is one of the family members that are supposed to keep the woods at peace, but like just recently came back because everyone vanished. Like they just all left. Her sister Elphine died. After that, everyone got really sad and they just moved out. But Lucia has returned. Kate has come back. She doesn't live in the village anymore. She rebuilds cathedrals. And Chloe's there because she's getting married. And she decides, oh, let's get married at Small Angels. And nobody tells her that that maybe isn't a good idea because it's really connected to the woods. Until she gets there. Chloe shows up, and Brian Last, I do believe is his name. Mr. Brian Last tells her about the story of the Gon's grandfather's funeral and how he saw like something spooky at the edge of the woods when they were celebrating, because like a Blanche Farm funeral is like a big event where everyone from the village attends. They're always at like the middle of the night, and then everyone goes to Blanche Farms and like eats a shit ton of food and they like party. I think that's the basic premise of the book. They come back, they're told that something spooky's happening. Chloe goes, what's spooky? And then she gets curious and finds out that the woods are kind of waking up, and that that's not a good thing because the woods stopped being friendly after some point, and they started going absolutely mental and started like being incredibly dangerous to the townspeople. So they don't talk about it. Brian Last is the only person who like tells anything about anything. He likes the stories. He thinks they're legit. Everyone else thinks they're either superstition or they're so afraid that they pretend that it's superstition. I'm gonna give this book like 3 out of 5. And I know that makes it sound like I'm a really tough grader because I gave God Nisha 3.5, but 3.5 is a 70%. That's, according to my university, that is excellent. That is an excellent grade. This gets a pass. I don't want to have you think that this book sucks ass, but I do think they fumbled the bag at the end. I really, really liked Lucia and Kate's stories that we're following. I feel like Chloe kind of like fell off towards like the middle end of the book, which is really, it's kind of disappointing because she's our first main character that we meet and she's not even there for like the end conflict. It feels like Lauren almost like forgot about her or was just like, oh no, she wouldn't want to, which like she was not listening to anyone's rules up to that point. Why would she not? But then at the same time, I had such a visceral, okay, I didn't mention where the gay comes in. These two are gay for each other. And I've never been able to suss out like sexual tension between 2 characters so fast in my entire life. Their first interaction, I went, are they gay for each other? And then I was right. These 2 are absolutely phenomenal and I love them. And Lucia's story made me cry, so I can't give this like a like a mediocre grade because it did something enough to make me cry, but Chloe just like feels abandoned, and like some of her storylines are just kind of like dropped, and it sucks. And it's not that I need everything to be explained. I'm not that kind of person that's like, you need to explain to me every bit of your information that you have. You gotta give me all the answers to the questions. I don't need that. That's not something I require. I think some things should have been explained like a little bit though, and it feels like some of them like have half explanations, or they are almost explained, but it's left ambiguous enough, which is so weird. What kind of person do I think would like this book? I think if you're gay, you would like it. I think if you have an interest in stories that are about familial and generational trauma, I think you would like it. If you like something that feels like just like a little whimsical, I think it's a good book for you. I feel disappointed in the book because there were so many elements that I just like adored. There were elements that I thought were astounding, and they just fumbled them, and that sucks because I really wanted this book to just do it, you know? I just wanted it to like really bring it home. Now we're going to talk about kind of like more spoilery. I think I'm going to spoil more than I did with A God in the Shed because there are just so many things that I want to talk about with this book where it just kind of just want to talk about it, I think. Whereas like with A God in the Shed, I wanted you to read it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't read this book. I think this book was great. It gave me so many things to like consider and questions to have answers and things for me to think about. I just think that the ending fell a little flat, and that it could have been more. Ugh, I sound so sad. Like there were parts of this book where I had like physical reactions where I was like, it's gay? Whoa! And like I have tabs just for when gay shit happens because I was so excited every time something gay happened. Like I was pumped. And you know what? I want to talk about things that made me pumped. I want to talk about Lucia and Kate's story first. Because they're kind of intertwined because they're gay for each other. I just have to start in the woods though. Okay, hold on. We're gonna bang this out, okay? So we have the woods. This is my favorite way to explain things, by the way. I'll like explain so much weird shit to my partner just by like I'll just be like, all right, you're gonna get some FNAF lore today, and I'll like go to the whiteboard that we have over by his computer, and I'll just be like, okay, so here's this and this and this, and this is not the same as this, but it might be the same as this, and this is my favorite way to tell stories. That looks dumb, but I'm gonna keep it because it's kind of funny. It's a good visual cue. So 200 years before the start of our protagonist story, we have the story of Harry Child. Okay, I did not label him, but this one is Harry. Okay, and Harry was born in the Rose. Okay, so this is Harry, and Harry Child was born in the Rose House, which is in the middle of the Mockbagger Woods, on the other side of the Thane River. Harry's family is really poor, so they don't have like a lot of money to feed them, and whoever the like dad at Blanche Farms thinks that this is his son, which it could be because Harry's dad like travels a lot selling music. So Harry gets taken to Blanche Farms and he meets Fred. This is Fred Hart. He's basically his new brother, and Fred Hart thinks he's a fucking weirdo, like doesn't like him very much, but then they like start to bond and they have this like brotherly connection, and things are going okay for a while. By the way, the Woods love Harry Child. They love him. That is their son. They love him. That is their boy. They love him so much. And then eventually like Harry and Fred start getting along a bit. Okay, so Fred grows up and he like moves, he goes to the city. We're just gonna say the city's here. He moves to the city and then he comes back to the village and he's like hanging out with Harry, And he's like getting married. He has like a wife now. He's gonna get married. That's the wife. She looks like a golf tee, but that's fine. They're gonna get married. Fred is pissed off that Harry isn't jealous of him. That he's not like, I wish I was like my cool brother who's like successful and stuff. Harry's just happy, living his life in the village. People like him, people talk to him, they don't think he's a weirdo. Everyone's fine. He's mad that he's not envious of him. So he takes his 3 hunting dogs and they fucking murder him and tear him to shreds. And then they bury him not very deep underground so that when the mock beggar gets sad that their boy is missing, they cry and the rain washes out his body. And the villagers find out that this man is dead. And the villagers decide they're going to hang Fred for his crimes. But before he can do that, Harry, who has been resurrected by the woods who love him so much, hang him with a noose made out of briar and thorns, which is astounding, outside of the Rose house. And in the Rose house, there is a dog rose tree now. The roses have a scent, which apparently regular dog roses don't have a scent, but they have a scent now because the woods love him so much. And this is what made the woods angry in the first place. This is why they're so bitter and cranky. Fred basically killed their son for literally no reason. I gotta find a better setup for this. It needs to be higher. At some point this will be on a wall. Who are we gonna talk about next? We're gonna talk about Lucia. Lucia gone. Ugh, I love her. Okay. So Lucia has 3 sisters. She has Ruby, Helena, and Elphine. And Elphine is a sweetheart and we love her. And Helena and Ruby are both kind of like sticklers for the rules, which they're older. So they're like... And they live at Blanche Farms, and their family has lived there for basically 2 centuries. They're descendants of Fred Hart. Well, I guess not Fred. He wasn't a... Who are they descendants of? Because Fred died. But they're still like part of the family. There must have been like other siblings that were just never mentioned that they're descendants of. That... Or maybe Fred Hart's wife remarried and like had kids. Okay, a little hiccup. I don't know exactly. They're like somehow related because they've lived, their family has lived in Blanche Farms for like two centuries, 200 years. And they live with their nan, their grandpa, and their dad basically doesn't do jack shit. He's a pushover. So one of the rules about being born at Blanche Farms is that you have to be born in Blanche Farms. And their mother did not like that. So when she was going to give birth to Lucia, she tried to flee. She tried to go to a hospital to give birth in a hospital. She didn't make it that far and she gave birth in the woods. Lucia has always had this like label of being bad put on her because she was born wrong. And she was always like a mischievous, selfish little girl who would like pull pranks and do things just to make herself happy. And she goes into the woods and they're like, do not cross the Thane River. Don't do that. But no one ever tells her why, which like, is that her fault? No one ever told her why she shouldn't cross the river. So she crossed the river and then she finds Harry Child as a little boy and she befriends him. And they spend a lot of time together in the woods and they form like a really close friendship. And then one morning, Lucia sees Kate in the graveyard outside of Small Angels. She just gets the biggest crush. Harry's like jealous. He's like, you better not leave me. You need to not see that girl again, blah, blah, blah. Lucia, who's just a young, mischievous gay child, continues to see Kate. Eventually her sisters meet Kate and they all really love her and they want her to like spend time with them and play with them. And one of the things that they do as children is they go into the woods and they like act out plays and performances like that they make up for the woods. The woods like add their magic and they like make it feel so real. So they like bring Kate to one of those, and while they're waiting, Lucia and Kate do a little smooch. They do a little on the lips, and their grandpa comes in and sees it, and like all havoc breaks loose because They're not supposed to bring any outsiders into the Mock Beggar Woods. So then Harry's pissed because he's like, you promised you wouldn't see her. Then you kissed her? You're going to forget about me. You're going to leave me alone. Because that's his thing. He doesn't want to be left alone. And she's like, oh, no, it's not like that. Then he kills her grandpa. He, like, chokes grandpa out. Grandpa, like, right before that was like cut down the rose tree in the rose house. Harry would probably die. Grandpa ends up going to the hospital. He's there for like a week, basically. And no one's allowed to see him. It's just him and his wife. And Grandma goes back sometimes to, like, talk to the girls and, like, talk about how upset she is. And Lucia, like, tells her all the secrets. And she just, like, fucking smacks the shit out of her. She's like, you've been doing what? You were friends with Harry and then you betrayed him? Oh my god, everyone's fucked now. Grandpa dies. They're gonna have the funeral. Kate, like, goes to the graveyard early. And Lucia shows up and she's weak. She's weak to Kate, and she gives her a big ol' smooch. She gives her a big ol' kiss. And then the Woods get really mad. Lucia gets locked upstairs in Fred Hart's old room. And she finds, like, marbles in his pocket. Like, in a coat pocket that was just there because no one ever used Fred's room. The marbles will be important later. Kate's mad because she's like, I want to see Lucia. I want to know that, like, she's okay. And mind you, they're, like, 16 at this point. And Grandma's like, no, you're not allowed. She's bad. She's always been bad. She will be bad. She's Lucia the bad. And then Kate's like, I'm gonna go fuck up the woods. So she runs into the woods by herself like a crazy person. I love Kate. And she, like, she goes to fight him. Elphine goes upstairs and she's like, Lucia, what's happening? Like, through the door. And Lucia's like, we need to go. Kate's in fucking danger. We need to get out of here right now. So, like, Elphine lets her out and all of the girls, like, chase after Kate into the woods. And they find her, like, being choked out. And Lucia's like, I'm gonna go fucking kill that tree. So she, like, has an axe and she's going in. She's like chopping down the tree. And Harry's ghost is like, no, don't do it. And he, like, starts making her relive his death through her mind. And then Elphine comes up and goes, don't worry about it. I got it. And then she cuts down the tree, and because she's reliving the death, she dies. Which is fucked up, but they save Kate. So Elphine dies, sacrificing herself for everyone else. We love Elphine. She's a sweet soul. I gotta read you some of these, like, little gay moments. One of the quotes that made me think, like, oh, this bitch gay. Listen to this and tell me this isn't the gayest thing you've ever heard in your life. At that time, it had felt as if they had endless time to advance and retreat, to be awkward and tender and belligerent by turns, time to grow together at their leisure, like trees. Ugh. Just the gayest. Just cottagecore lesbian vibes with, like, a little bit of, like, Wiccan in there. It's, astounding. Just beautiful. So, like, Lucia's the only one that's come back to Blanche Farms out of her whole family, and she looks like garbage. She looks like she is sick and dying all the time. And Kate is in town because of her brother's wedding. She's told to stay away, but then eventually she gives in and she goes to see her, and they, like, reconnect, and they talk about how to, like, stop the woods. Lucia kind of just, she's like, there's too much. The woods spread the roses everywhere. There is not one place that we can go and cut down that would get rid of Harry permanently. I can't keep talking about this even though I really want to, because I have to talk about Chloe, because all of the stories have to, like, come together at the end. So Chloe's getting married and she's an outsider, and she hears a voice, like, narrating her actions inside of her own mind. This is one of those things that made me really disappointed, because I thought that was so cool. This, like, someone realizing they're, like, part of a story now and that someone's narrating for her. Sick. She's also having, like, nightmares hearing, like, Fred Hart freaking out right before Harry comes and, like, kills him. So cool. So interesting. The woods, she's so curious about the woods. She goes into the woods and she removes the copper coins from Harry's tree, which lets it, like, come back to life sooner. She wants Sam to listen to her. Sam is her fiance. She wants him to listen to her, and he just, like, doesn't, because he's been raised to ignore it. at all times, like anything having to do with the woods. Like their thing is the like motto of the town is we leave the woods to the Gonds. So he doesn't want to talk about it. Kate doesn't know that Chloe knows, so they can't talk about it. She goes into the woods and the story voice changes into like a warning. It's like, oh no, she didn't eat the berries, because all the berries in the woods are poisonous, but she eats the berries because she's like, I'm not gonna listen to you, even though she's like a type A, planning every second out kind of person. And like just not a lot happens in her stories. She's dealing with all this. She's like making nooses in her sleep, like out of her bridal veil. She's like, she can barely sleep because when she tries to sleep, she hears Fred, and she's worried she's gonna break her wedding stuff because there's like a tear in her dress and she's turning shit into nooses. And Sam isn't like staying with her, he's staying with his parents because they have slightly better Wi-Fi, because he's a businessman and he has to do business things. And then when she finally tells Sam what's going on, he's like, all right, we gotta get you out of here then. And then she coughs up dirt and she's like, it's not gonna let me go. So they like have a plan to escape at the wedding. So they like have the ceremony, and then she like gets into a car with Kate, and then they drive off, and like Sam has to like outrun a ghost dog. They like crash, like Kate crashes the car not very far away, and they're like sitting there and they're like, what do we do? How are we gonna outrun him? Because Harry's right there. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. Which I don't understand why he chose Chloe, because it literally, the math doesn't check out, but I'll explain that later. So then Lucia like rings the bell at Small Angels, which is a thing they used to do for ritual, to be like, Harry, we know you're there, we didn't leave you, we're still thinking about you, we know you exist. He realizes that that's Lucia, so he abandons Kate and Chloe and he goes to the church. They also have like a bunch of townspeople there who are like helping out, and so Kate and Chloe are not at the church. Lucia goes out and she like leaves a note on a tombstone that she always like would leave for Kate. Like they'd like pass notes back and forth on I think it was Miss Victoria's tombstone. She tells Harry, she's like, I'll stay with you forever. I'll just do that. And so they like leave off into the woods. Kate and Chloe can't run back fast enough, but then Lucia's two remaining sisters show up, Helena and Ruby, because Sam called them the night before. They drive to the church, and then Kate sees the note and she's like, we gotta go after Lucia. Lucia's about to like absolutely destroy things for herself. She's gonna like live in the woods forever. Like, we can't have that. Her and the sisters run off into the woods, and Chloe doesn't do anything for like the rest of the book, which is insane to me, because she didn't start it. Like, it's not her fault the woods came back to life, but it's kind of her fault that it came back faster. And with all of the emphasis that like Harry was putting on Chloe, it's weird that she wouldn't be there for like the end. It's just strange to me. So the girls run through the woods, and then they end up at like a cliff. So there's like, they're on this side, and then I'll just draw it. Hold on. This is Lucia and Harry, and there's like a cliff, and then there's the river running in between them, and then on the other side is the three girls. And so, like, Lucia's about to walk off the cliff. She's like, I'll just live forever by being dead, and I'll just like stay in the woods forever with you. And oh my god, this chapter absolutely bodied me. Ugh. It's told from Lucia's perspective. It talks about how she grew up always being told that she was bad, and she had this mental image of herself being awful and a burden. How like her nan would tell her, you are bad and one day that's gonna kill you, you're gonna live a bad death. Oh my god, I started crying because the girls at the other side of the river start telling stories about herself. They start being like, remember that time, Lucia, when you did this and you did that and we did these things together and this is how you made me feel. And she starts to hear how she's not bad. She's not Lucia the bad. She is, hold on. She believes this is the best way to end her story. She says, as she's like on the cliff, she's like, so we came here to a place where I can end this story well. She has this belief that like this is the only good way to end her story, that this is the only way she can do something good in her life. And so they start yelling these stories at her. And so like as the girls are like yelling at her, she says, their voices drift across the river to me. I'm not listening, but the words find their way in all the same, like sunlight through heavy curtains. They're telling a story. Or, it's not that exactly, but they're speaking by turns, offering memories, pleas, words of love. They're begging me to make something different out of these, a new story of myself. It's a story of me, but not one that I know, not one I have ever told or heard. In their words, I am young, terrifyingly fragile, barely able to hold my head up. I am jaded and bewitching. I am infuriating, a teenage thorn in the side. I am a thief of food and clothes and wine. I am generous in sharing the spoils of my crimes. I am wild in joyous company. I am a co-conspirator. I am selfish. I am Elphine's tender guardian. There are so many stories, they say. The past is vast. The future is infinite possibility. They beg me to choose again, to shape a kinder narrative. And I can tell that they believe it. They believe everything they are saying. When I tell you that I was sobbing, I'm going to talk about why this hit me so hard in a second, because they follow this up by explaining to Harry that he doesn't have to be vengeful and angry, and that Fred still loved him after he murdered him because he kept his marbles. And I think that's lame as hell, because he killed him because he was mad that he wasn't jealous of him. So I don't see how that connects. She's sitting there going, I need to tell your story different. You need to figure out a different way to tell your story, the same way that they told me a different story of myself. But his story doesn't make sense to be told another way, because his brother was just mad that he wasn't jealous of him. You're right, Keela. I mean envious. I know what I'm talking about. He wasn't envious, so he killed him. That's, I don't think that's a thing that you can just be like, oh, but he kept your marbles. What the fuck are you talking about? So then Harry talks about how, everything is fine, everything's great, this is how me and my brother lived when we were brothers, and he gets to pass on, and the Woods are pissed, so they try to kill Lucia in turn, and so, Elphine's ghost shows up to help the other girls find out how to get to the Rose house, because they've forgotten how to get there, because they've been away for so long, and they find her, and she looks like shit, because the Woods are trying to just murk her straight up, and they end up getting lost in the woods. According to the book, it's been over 2 days basically that they're lost in the woods. It's over a day at least. They end up in the place where they used to put on their plays, and so they decide to tell the Woods that, well, if you opened up your paths to the villagers again, they could give you more stories. They could come, they could tell stories, we could bring our families to tell stories. We are also your children. We also grew up in these woods. We can provide you with more. We can give you more. The villagers can come back and they can tell you about their lives and the things that are going on in the village. And so the Woods let them go. And I do have to give props that they did not kill a lesbian, because that is just a thing that happens all the time. There's a lesbian couple and then one of them dies, usually to save the other one, and they did not kill these lesbians. Thank God. Also, they showed us that I do believe it's Helena is also gay and has a wife. So we love that. We love all the gays in this book. That's my favorite part, is the gays. I love the relationship, and Lucia's story is so good. And they just fucking fumble the bag at the end. And it's so heartbreaking, because this book did something, because it made me cry. I'm just so disappointed by the ending. So they have this speech about you can open the woods to the villagers again. They can come back. They can tell you their stories. It doesn't just have to be us who live at Blanche Farms. And then the next chapter, which is the last one, Chloe, she's back now, goes, we should tell the villagers about the woods. And Kate has to go ask them, ask the Gons if they think that's a good idea. That's what they promised the Woods. If they don't fulfill their promise to the Woods are gonna go fucking crazy and start killing people again. You have to tell the Woods. Why is this a thing we have to discuss if we're going to do it or not? It just doesn't make sense to me. It feels like Lauren went, oh yeah, I need Chloe to do something, and then gave her, why could they not have had her in the woods and then have her go, hey, what if other people came and told stories to the Woods, and then that was how they got out? Why was Chloe not there for that? She's the first main character we meet and she's not important to the end conclusion of the story. She even met Lucia at one point. So she could have told a story about how she found her in the woods and helped her get out and showed that she could be helpful, and she's just not there. And I feel like that sucks. I feel like it feels like Chloe was like the character that Lauren liked writing the least, so she just like left her out of some things, which I get, because Lucia and Kate are just like so much more like engaging characters, but that's because she wasn't like Chloe's just left out. Oh, I do want to talk about why that one part made me cry. There seems to be, it feels like a theme of familial abuse, like a cycle of abuse, because Nan had an abusive father growing up, and so then she also views Harry as being kind of like an abusive man of the house, and so she then becomes abusive to her grandchildren because she doesn't want them to get hurt by Harry. And so it's just this constant cycle of like, well, you can't do that because that's bad, and that's bad, and that's bad, and I'm gonna smack you. She hits the shit out of Lucia. Like, she even says like it was not a baby slap. Like, she smacked Lucia. Even like in the village, it feels like the village has had like familial abuse with like 2 centuries of like the Gons family like keeping them at distance, and like they're scared of the woods, and so they end up telling the villagers, and it feels like this like great cycle of abuse has been broken, and it started by having Lucia not think that way about herself anymore. She had to stop like internally abusing herself in order to fix the cycle for everyone else, and it just made me bawl, just sob. We need to talk about the storytelling voice, the narrator voice, because it is one of those things that has made me so cranky. It's one of the things that I think they fumbled the hardest. So in Chloe's mind, the narrator voice shows up for the first time and says, okay, so there was a girl named Chloe, and she was getting married, okay? And she's sitting there like, what is happening? Like, who is this? Who is talking? And throughout the whole chapter, it says other things, like she was curious, she felt this way, she felt that way, she removed the coins from the tree so that it could breathe, and they all happen afterwards. All of the storytelling in this book is diegetic except for 2 examples. So there's like a flashback story that Lucia's telling from her own perspective, but she's telling that to Kate in the current timeline. So those chapters are diegetic to the book itself. So there's always like an explanation for when these stories are being told, with the exception of the storytelling voice. And there are 2 chapters that are told from Nan's perspective, the Gon's grandmother, that is just never explained. Was it Lucia telling the story from her grandmother's perspective? I don't think so, because there's a point where she says something and is like, that's something I never really told Lucia. So how would Lucia know? I don't understand where that part comes from. But we're not talking about that right now. We are talking about the storytelling voice. So that the narrator voice, we're gonna label these because there's 2 voices. So there's 2 forms of the narrative voice, or the storytelling voice. So one is narrative, and those are shown in block paragraphs, so they're like slightly thinner than the other paragraphs in the chapter. They're always explaining something that is happening either as she's doing it or just after she does it. And then when she's in the woods, she hears a warning voice, which is differentiated by the fact that it tells her things before she does them and is written in italics. So I am forced to believe that these 2 voices are from different people. I think that this voice, this warning voice, is Elphine seeing someone in the woods and going, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, don't touch that, and is like, she's constantly caring, even from beyond the grave. I think that this voice is Elphine. The actual narrative voice, we have 2 options for, and I'm going to present the evidence for possibly both. So, one example, one option that we have is that it's Brian. So at the end of the book, Brian is tasked with telling the story of the woods to the villagers. The Gons girls go to the pub and they're like, here's what's happening, here's what's going on, we brought you food and stuff, don't worry, you can eat it, it's not gonna kill you. We're gonna let Brian be like the storyteller, though. So they let him do it. The start of the story, he says he has had planned for a while, he's known how it's going to start. And he's going to say, oh my god, I can't write from this angle. And this is like the last line that the book ends on. This is the final chapter. And he says, all right, so, which you will notice is almost okay, so, but it's not. But it could be, but it's not. These are different words, but they're almost the same. So, could the narrative voice be Brian Last telling Chloe's story in the future? Maybe. That would be kind of sick. But I have another theory, that the voice is actually the woods itself. So Brian knows a lot about the woods, and while I think some of it was told to him by the Gons and Kate, because Kate shares Lucia's story with like a bunch of people, but like leaves out the gay bits, I think he can talk to the woods a little bit. Because like when the book starts, he's the only one that like wants to share the story of the woods. He seems to be the only villager that believes in the story, and people call him like a doom peddler, but I think there might be something else. So if the woods are narrating Chloe's voice, Chloe's narrative voice, what if Brian could hear it? What if he could hear the voice? Or he could because how would he know for a while that he was going to start with like, okay, so, or all right, so, unless he heard that the mock beggar said that to Chloe, and he's like, oh, that's how my story starts. But guess what? It doesn't matter, because after chapter 15, the Blackberry Maze, which is when we meet the warning voice, the narrative voice is never brought up again. The storytelling voice is gone. It is never brought up. It is never mentioned again. Ever. There's also a point where Chloe questions, this is also towards the end of the book. Chloe questions, she goes, why was I chosen? Why did the woods choose me? Did Harry choose me? Why was Harry so, like, ready to just murk me? Which is a great question. It used her. The woods used her to let Harry free early. And they tell her it could have been just that, like, you were happy or, like, you were new. I don't really think it matters that he chose you, which is fine. I am okay with an explanation of it could have been anyone. It didn't necessarily have to be you, because I like that. I like stories where it could have been anyone. But let's talk about the ties that Chloe has to the core story. So Chloe has chosen Small Angels as her wedding venue because the other church in the village that is run by her soon-to-be in-laws is double booked. So something happened where she couldn't go to her first church, draw a little church in there, and so then instead she went to Small Angels, okay? She's also new to the village, and she's interested in Brian's story, which might have made her more susceptible to listening to the woods, okay? She's like, that's an interesting story, I need to figure out what's going on. But I think the most important thing is that Chloe is about to get married to Sam, whose sibling is Kate, who is in love with Lucia, who then Harry wants. Harry wants Lucia. Okay, so this is editing Ken here. I realized that I didn't actually explain why I even brought this up as a concept. I just think that it's interesting and strange that it could have been anyone, but it was someone who was so entwined into Harry's story through relations. That was my point. I don't know why I didn't say that. I actually said something completely different in the clip, but it was dumb, so I cut it out. But this is what I meant. Okay? Thanks. Bye. I think there should have been a little bit of an explanation as to why it picked Chloe. Is it because she is naive? Is it because she is new? Is it because she is distantly, like, she's like 2 degrees of separation away from Lucia? It feels too deliberate to be nothing. Is it because she's happy? Is it because she's getting married? Fred went nuts after he got married that Harry wasn't jealous of his new wife. Did it remind him of that? Like, there's not enough to think about here. For it, this feels empty. And then she doesn't even do anything towards the end of the book, and the one thing she did, the Gons already had kind of decided they were going to do. Like, I feel like it fumbled the bag, guys. And I'm really sad about it, because the book made me feel shit. And then it just made me feel disappointed. I wanna give it a lower score. But I can't, because it made me cry, so it obviously did something good. But I feel like it just started dropping things, and it just forgot about things, and I'm so frustrated with it. This book also came out, like, in 2022. Is that the copyright date? I think it's 2022. And, like, it is beautiful, and the prose is gorgeous. And there were only, like, a couple, like, errors that I saw, where, I think the biggest one was there's a point where mock beggar isn't combined into one word, they're, like, separated. But, like, it was beautifully written, it just, like, didn't stick the landing. Like, I can't even be angry about it. Like, I love an angry book rant. Love a book rant. I can't even do that with this, because I wanted it to be so good. Plus, it was a hardcover, it was expensive. Ugh. 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 Thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with my whiteboard. I don't know if I'm going to use it again. It was very difficult to, like, figure out how I was going to place it. Yeah, did you read this book? Have you read Small Angels? What did you think? Let me know. I'm going to be reading Song of the Sandman next, so if you're interested, stick around. I'm so sad. I finished it yesterday, and then I, like, spent the day just, like, digesting it, and I just, every time I thought more about it, I just, like, got more disappointed. But they didn't kill their lesbians, so bonus points for you, Lauren. Beggar Woods. Sorry. Keela, this is a disaster. Such a catastrophe. For you to see so much of my ass you ask from me. But I'm back. Dun 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 dun.